Miami Dolphins training camp is set to get underway today, and on this show of Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, Miami gets an interesting update, and it's not the best, it's not the worst, it's conflicting, and we need to talk about it. And as training camp does begin, first official practices today, Wednesday the 23rd, I will continuously be having updates around training camp on my social media, so make sure you follow me at Nic_Rohloff. I'll be tweeting out news, the highlights, some clips. So if you want more around Dolphins training camp, is it set to get underway? Well, that's the best place to go find it, as well as being subscribed. All right, the conflicting news is on Zach Sieler, the defensive lineman, as his agent Drew Rosenhaus this last Sunday evening on his weekly hit on a TV station in Miami talked about Sieler and his contract situation, saying that this is something that will be discussed between Zach and the Dolphins, that we will be having an internal discussion. We haven't talked much publicly about the situation by design. That will be internal between myself and Zach and the Dolphins. Zach will be at training camp Tuesday, but they also asked, will he be participating in practice? And that is how he responded. So you might ask, why is this conflicting? Well, it's kind of good and bad at the same time. We know that Zach, at least to a degree, wants a new contract. Well, he's not going to be holding out, so good. But it's not ideal that they didn't just come out and say right away that Sieler was going to be practicing. That, to me, sounds like we might see Zach Sieler on the sidelines in the first week or maybe longer of Dolphins practices. And that's not good. I do not want to see a hold-in. Maybe he does like individual drills, but when it comes to 7-on-7 and team drills, maybe he's not doing it. Like, all hold-ins may be different. Either way, any way you slice it, it's not ideal for the Miami Dolphins. So let's take a look at Zach Sieler's contract right now. He's under contract for 2 more years, 25 and 26, both of them making similar money, $7.3 million base, $7.5 million base in 26. And then for Miami, has a cap charge of $12.4 million this year and $11.4 in 2026. Now, I think the issue that Zach Sieler is having with his contract is this number right here. This is not just for this season, folks. If you look at Zach Sieler's contract via over the cap, there is only $2.2 million guaranteed for Zach over the next 2 seasons. That is not good for him. It's an absolute steal, though, for the Miami Dolphins. It's one of those things where it's so tough. Like, as someone who just wants to see the team succeed, well, you couldn't ask for anything more out of a player that is making that much money. That is how good Zach Sieler is. But if you put yourself in his shoes, well, then a player that is as productive and thought of highly in the league like Zach Sieler is, back-to-back years with double-digit sacks, you feel probably a little bit disrespected. I wouldn't say that, maybe that's not the right word, not feeling happy about how little you're getting paid for how impactful you have been for your particular ball club. So I do understand him wanting more money or an extension or more guaranteed money. I also understand Miami not wanting to give it to him because, like, dude, we gave you a contract. You're already 30 years old. We don't really want to invest that much money into you, considering that you're already near maybe the tail end of your career. So before I dive into my thoughts even more, pin comment on today's show, I want to get your thoughts. Are you concerned about Zach Sieler potentially holding in at Dolphins training camp? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Like I said, it's the pin comment on today's show, so let me know your thoughts. I will say, as we're filming this before practices get underway and we're unclear about what Zach Sieler is going to do, it's hard to give you a full answer, but I do feel pretty optimistic about this being ironed out. Why do I say that? Well, Zach Sieler is just such a high-character guy, and he is someone that is just a hard hat, come to work, blue-collar, lunch pail dude who just wants to win and just wants to play football for a living. And I find it hard to believe that he would take this into the regular season and forfeit game checks to not play. I just don't see that happening. But I am a little bit concerned because this is one of your most productive players, one of your biggest leaders. And he didn't really have the best start to his career, but he finally broke out alongside Christian Wilkins in 2023. That's when he got the contract extension. And people were like, well, is he going to be able to repeat that production if we don't Christian Wilkins and Sieler's now the main defensive lineman that opposing teams are scripting against with their offensive line coverage. Well, he did. He actually had, I would say, a better season considering he played 2 less games, didn't have an Pro Bowl level D tackle next to him in Christian Wilkins, and he still put up good numbers, better numbers in 2 less games, like I mentioned. So to me, like, Zach Sieler is one of the most underappreciated players in the entire National Football League. We're talking about a guy who has had 10 sacks in each of the last 2 seasons. He's played in 32 of the 34 possible games in the regular season for Miami over the past 2 years. And you look at a disappointing 2024 season for Miami, Zach Sieler was the best player on that team. It wasn't Tyreek Hill. It wasn't Jalen Waddle. It wasn't Jalen Ramsey. It was not Javon Holland. It was Zach Sieler. So he was the best player in your team last season. He's one of your best leaders. I just think that this is a player that needs to be felt appreciated, so you need to pay him. That is my thoughts on Zach Sieler. Like, you look more into what he's capable of doing. He is just arguably the best interior defensive line pass rusher. Like, probably not better than Dexter Lawrence as a whole. Definitely not. And I'd probably maybe give it to Chris Jones or Dexter Lawrence still in just terms of pure pass rushing. But you look at the 42 qualified interior defensive linemen, he ranks in the top half in almost every single metric. The only one that he doesn't is the pass rush win rate at 8.7%. But he still was phenomenal in generating pressures, finishing sacks, getting after the quarterback and forcing hurries. Like, he just is that dude. And when you can generate pressure from the middle of that offensive line, that's where things just get even more hectic for opposing quarterbacks because they can't step up. Instead, they're forced to flush out of the pocket where you have athletic Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, and Bradley Chubb chasing him down. So he plays a large role in that. Now, it wasn't as smooth last year in the run game for Zach, but this is something that he's been good at before in his career, so I'm not sweating over the fact that he wasn't that good in the run game last year, which is very funny, too, because obviously PFF grades are subjective, right? The stats aren't. Stop percentage, stop missed tackle percentage, all ranking in the bottom half of qualified defensive linemen last year. But PFF graded them in run defense as the 13th highest. It's just fascinating to me how advanced numbers say that it's probably not as good as it would indicate based off his overall run stopping grade. But the point is, Zach Sieler is one of the best two-way defensive linemen, stopping the run, getting after the quarterback, a leader. Like, he is your culture. He is such a big piece in that locker room to where it makes me a little uneasy when he is upset. More to come here on the show, but if you want every single day content on the Dolphins and the best coverage of Dolphins training camp on YouTube, this is the place for you. Subscribe to Dolphins Today. We're a family. We're continuing to grow. And make sure to turn on notifications as well, because we put out 1 video a day, and we're going to start ramping up our coverage of 2 videos a day. So make sure you start subscribing and staying locked in. Like, you could take away everything that Zach Sieler does for the Miami Dolphins on game days on the football field and just look at what he does from a leadership perspective and in the locker room, and I would still say it is worth paying him what you are currently paying him, and you might make the argument that it would still be worth paying him more for what he's able to do. I mentioned it earlier. He's played in 32 out of 34 games for you in the past 2 seasons. Not many players on the Dolphins team can say that because we've dealt with so many injuries. And with players coming and going, Bradley Chubb coming in and getting hurt, the Tyreek Hill drama off the field, Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland, like so many players, Christian Wilkins, Robert Hunt, Andrew Van Ginkel, like the list goes on and on of good players coming in and out of this locker room. Zach Sieler has been here, and he's just one of the most dependable people that you can count on and have on this roster. It should be a no-brainer to extend him for me. And if you get him extended sooner rather than later, you do not have to worry about him not participating in practice. And maybe he does do a hold-in where he does individual drills, but when it gets to 7-on-7s and the pads come on to do teamwork, he is not participating in practice. And I just don't like that. I want him working hand-in-hand with Kenneth Grant, Zeke Biggers, Jordan Phillips. They need to be working together on a daily basis because if the Dolphins want to have a good season and overachieve, They need their front four. They need their trenches on both sides to improve from where it was a year ago. And it's only going to improve if Zach Sieler is in your building, getting reps and working with these younger guys. Like, the defensive line wasn't the greatest thing in the world for Miami last season, but Calais Campbell's impact can't be like understated from a year ago. He was phenomenal. And although I really like Kenneth Grant, I can't wait to see him play on Sundays for the Fins. I can't confidently say he's going to be more impactful this season than what Calais Campbell was last year. I hope he is. He can be, but I can't say it with 100% confidence because of how good Campbell was last year. So if you want to get the most out of these young guys, specifically your 13th overall pick, Kenneth Grant, you need Zach Sieler daily there in the building, mentoring, teaching, and showing the right way to go about things and the right way to be a professional in the National Football League. I don't really have that big of a concern with Kenneth Grant in terms of being a professional because he comes from Michigan. He's a high-character guy, and he's a good culture, a good motor, but it would just only continue to enhance that and get the most out of your first-round pick. So, yes, I do really want Zach Sieler in the building. We're rounding out the show here with what I want to do with Sieler and his contract, but make sure you get started with this unbelievable deal. Usually $55, $22 off for $33 right now. All you got to do is go to chatsports.com/MIA cutoff sale. That link's in the description and comments of today's video. Sizes are running out. Grab yours today. Perfect cutoff hoodie for the season that's vastly approaching. So you might ask, what would I do with Zach Sieler's contract? He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's 30 years old. I would be willing to give him a 2-year extension. So this would take him through age 34 year, which would obviously then be the last season of Zach Sieler's career, or at least being paid big money, unless he just continues to get better with old age, which is possible. But when you give this 2-year extension to Zach Sieler, you could lower Sieler's base salary this season and backload it a little bit. Because we know Miami, who doesn't have cap space right now for next year, they will when they inevitably release Tyreek Hill and save $36 million. So you can bank on that move happening next offseason and either maybe give Sieler more of a cap charge and more money next year, or you could backload the extension in 2027 and 2028. Like, if you give him more guaranteed money now and move some of the money around to the back end of the contract, you can create $5.8 million in cap space. And that just feels so simple. I know it's not a ton. Like, 5.8 isn't like the most crazy. But if you restructure or extend Zach Sieler, you kill two birds with one stone. You make your best player on the defense happy, and you get one of your leaders in the building right away. You don't have to worry about that. But you also create enough cap space to go out and sign a player that is still out there in free agency at either cornerback and tight end. It just feels like the perfect no-brain situation, which is why I don't understand why it's not done already. Make your guy happy. He's playing at a high level. He's someone you developed internally. It's not like you traded for him or signed him halfway through his career. That should mean more. You should make those guys more happy than the guys that you trade for, which we know Miami has done a job of that with Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and Jalen Ramsey. It just feels so simple to me. I don't know why it's not done. So do you agree with me? Make the decision. Would you extend Zach Sieler? Type E for extend, type P for pass. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Final thought on today's show. I just want there to be no more drama, man. I'm done with it. Like, I wouldn't say we had drama with Jonas Savaiinaea. I just didn't like how long it took to get him signed. That's all fixed now. But you've had drama with Jalen Ramsey all offseason, Tyreek Hill, Javon Holland. Like, I just don't want this anymore. I want to make our good players happy, make them want to stay here, especially the ones that show you day in and day out that they want to be in the organization and they want to be a leader for your franchise, which is what Zach Sieler is and what he has been doing. Can't say the same for those other players that I just mentioned, but I can say it for Sieler. So why not just make him happy, no more drama, and give him that extension that he does deserve. All right, I'll do it for today's show. And as I mentioned, as training camp rolls on, we'll have you updated with more stuff around training camp over on my social media at Nic_Rohloff. And if an extension actually happens with Zach Sieler, I'll have the news over there first before we come over here and make a video about it. So make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow in another video. Go Fins.